Get in, lads. Welcome back to the Game of Full podcast. My name is Elijah, and today we're going to be covering the first legs of both semifinals matchups in the ASEAN Championship 2024 edition. So that's the Philippines versus Thailand and Singapore versus Vietnam. But before I get into it, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed watching those games and are looking forward to the second legs, and then make sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, because we've got a lot more content coming out for both the ASEAN region and AFC in the next few months. So if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe already, and then of course comment down below your opinions on the first and upcoming second legs, because I want to hear everything you guys are saying. First, we're going to start with the Philippines versus Thailand matchup, of course, because I'm Filipino and this was my most anticipated matchup. What a historic win for the Philippines against Thailand in the Philippines. Their first win against Thailand in 52 years. That means all the way back to 1972 was the last time they beat Thailand in an official game between the two. So absolutely historic win. It was in the Philippines at the Rizal Memorial Stadium, so makes it that much more special. And for me, before I get into the whole analysis of the game and whatnot, I am so proud of both the Azkuls and Albert Capellas as our manager. They have really come back from really the depths of nothing in this tournament. I mean, at one point, I did do a video, the last ASEAN video I did mention the Philippines, and I was talking about how it just didn't seem like they're going to make it out of the group stage. It did seem like they were going to get anything from the last game against Indonesia or anything, but they did, and they made it to the semifinals to play Thailand, who were, still are maybe, the number one contender to win this whole thing for the third year in a row. So, not much hope, I think, from around the world for the Philippines against Thailand. But I think a lot of us did have some hope in our hearts for the Azkuls, and they pulled out a victory in that first leg with a 2-1 win. And again, so proud of this team. Many teams against Thailand in this stage would just sit back and hope for a draw and then hope you can win on penalties in the second leg. But that's not what they did at all. From the first minute, Albert Capella set up the team to press high, use the wings and their pace to get forward, which is what they've typically been doing throughout the tournament. And it worked out in a 2-1 victories. Absolutely phenomenal from the Philippines. Sandro Reyes had one of the best goals of the tournament so far with a beautiful left-footed curler to that left side of the net. It was absolutely phenomenal from nothing, to be honest. I mean, he didn't have any opportunity really, and it looked like Thailand were set in where they were in defense, and it didn't look like the Philippines were going to break it down at all. But he made one touch to the left and just curled it into the top left. Oh my god, it was a great goal, one of the best goals of the tournament, not only for the Philippines but for any country participating in the ASEAN Mitsubishi Electric Cup. Thailand, on one hand, did not dominate the Philippines in the way that many would have thought. Like I said, Thailand are one of the best teams in the region, if not the best team in the ASEAN region, and becoming one of the better teams in the entire continent of Asia. They did not dominate the Philippines in the way that many thought they would. They've scored so many goals. I think they scored about 14 or 18 goals so far in this tournament, and that is unprecedented. That's like 18 goals in what 5 games. 5 games total to score 18 goals, and that is absolutely amazing from Thailand. So I fully expected them to score maybe 2 or 3 goals in this game. They only scored one. There absolutely seems to be a theme with the Philippines where Vietnam were in a very similar boat when they played them, where they do not allow the other team, even though how much better they are, to dominate them in any way, shape, or form, which is very good. I think Albert Capellas has set the Philippines up to play some pretty decent football. The way the system is playing, I think it's working so far. And, like a lot of these teams are not able to get the strongest foothold against the Philippines, which is absolutely crucial because that is the way they dominate this region, is because they're just able to bully the smaller teams. So it's really good that they weren't able to against the Philippines, and they have to make sure they don't do that in the second leg. So let's talk about the first half a little bit. The first half was very good by the Philippines overall. There were some mistakes made, and I think that kind of set them back just a little bit, especially at the end of the first half, which gave Thailand their only goal of the game. And they also almost scored again when they hit, I believe it was the crossbar. The Philippines goalkeeper was very far out. I will say that was not a good look from him. He was very far out. And that goal by Thailand arguably should have went in. It was just centimeters off from becoming a goal, and instead hit the crossbar and bounced back. So the Philippines were lucky to not be down by the end of the first half, even though they were winning 1-0 to start it off. The second half, on the other hand, was definitely a little bit different than the first half because there was way more pressure from Thailand that the Philippines had to endure for a long time. And they did. Obviously, they did. Thailand almost had another goal in the 91st minute, which would have won them the game more than likely, but it went just on the other side of the post. It was this close to being a goal or hitting the left side of the post and bouncing in. The Philippines did, I don't want to say got lucky, but they did have to endure a lot of pressure by Thailand, which is a good sign for that second game, because I do think they're going to have to face a lot more pressure depending on how Albert Cabez sets up the team. But I'll talk about that in a second. Before I do, though, I have to give my flowers to Kiki Linares, who may go down in Philippines history as a legendary player when it's all said and done, especially if they are able to make it to the final and maybe win the final. His goal in the last minute of the game was absolutely phenomenal. It showed tenacity, it showed aggressiveness. It showed a lot that the team needs to see, because he put in the effort and the desperation to get to the ball and put it in the back of the net through the header. It was just a great set piece overall. Great ball in by Zico Bailey that allowed I forget who, but somebody to bring it back into the middle, and it was like 3 Filipinos compared to 2 Thailand defenders defending him, and he was able to put it in the back of the net, and it might be one of the greatest moments in Philippines football history moving forward. I think it was a phenomenal moment. The entire stadium, I think 7,000 plus fans were going absolutely crazy. It was just a phenomenal game and finish for the Philippines. And before I move on, I do want to shout out the fans that did show up to the Rizal Memorial Stadium, because there's, I think, over 7,000, I think 7,600 or 7,900, one of the two. There were a lot of fans that showed up to the game, which is very, very good, because truthfully, in the games in the group stage, not counting Vietnam, I believe they played in Vietnam, I'm not sure, but there was not the biggest output from the fans in the stadium, which is no big deal. There still were some fans and still some supporter groups in the top right section of the stadium, which I did notice. And shout out all of you, if any of you are watching this video. I appreciate you being there. But this is the kind of level that the stadium needs to be at for Philippines football moving forward. It was fantastic, a fantastic support by the Philippines fans. Exactly what you want to see in important games like this. Against the likes of Thailand, and definitely they were the 12th man in that game and helped the Philippines get that win. And obviously, you can tell the fans went crazy at the end. It was a great time all around. I wish I was there. Hopefully, I get to go. But of course, this is only the first leg for this series, right? If this was just a one-off, absolutely fantastic, Philippines would be in the final, but they are not. It is just the first leg. There is still another leg to be played in Thailand, which is going to be a little bit harder. So, of course, it is a huge and historic win for the Philippines, but the tough part, in my opinion, still has yet to come. Of course, it's going to be in Thailand amongst a majority of Thailand fans. Very few Philippines fans, I'm going to assume, are going to be there. And it's interesting because Thailand, I think their best wins in this tournament so far have been away from home, not at home. They have won every game up until that game against the Philippines. It's a team that doesn't have many weaknesses, of course. I do think Thailand are going to go home very feeling somewhat confident. I mean, they're only down by 1 goal. Amongst their fans, they're going to hope to take control of the game from minute 1 and really push forward and get multiple goals and make it not that close in the end. But also, I think it does really matter how Albert Capella sets up the Philippines national team, because you could go a lot of different ways. This is one of the hardest leads to defend in the entire sport of soccer football. 2-1 is not an easy lead to defend. Anything could happen. Anything can go wrong. You can get a couple goals and go up 3-1, 4-1. You can concede a stupid, unlucky goal or make a mistake, and all of a sudden it's tied at 2-2. I am curious to see if he's either going to sit back with the team and really just soak up the pressure and hope that Thailand doesn't get a lucky break, or are they going to press high again and utilize the wings again moving forward? I'm not quite sure, but I do think that is the number one factor for both teams here. I think Thailand have the quality to play their game and probably get a win. I think it really more depends on how Albert Capella sets up the team and defends against a strong, dominant Thailand team moving forward. So I think that is the biggest factor moving into the second leg. But without a doubt, this is the best second leg to watch. If you had to watch one game in the semifinals, it is going to be this second leg between the Philippines and Thailand, because it's going to be an aggressive and important game. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of contests. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of aggression and fighting. It's going to be a great game to watch. So if you had to pick one, I would have watched that one. And hopefully, when it's all said and done, I'm going to be making a video just like this one, talking about how the Philippines are in the final against the likes of Vietnam or Singapore. So yeah, before I get into Vietnam and Singapore, if you're still watching, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and comment, of course. But now let's get on to Singapore and Vietnam. Singapore in that game are very unfortunate to not be leaving this game with a 0-0 draw. That was kind of how it was leaning towards. There were a lot of different things that happened in the last 15 minutes of the game, and eventually Singapore did lose 2-0 to Vietnam. Now, I have noticed there are a lot of Singaporean fans online on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube really complaining about the refereeing in this game. Same with Vietnamese fans as well. Honestly, the referee, in my opinion, was not that good. It wasn't a good showing of the level of quality in this region overall. It just wasn't good from the referees. There were some missed calls, there were some right calls. There were just, to be fair, a lot of different things to call. That first, that volley goal by Xuan Sun should have been, in my opinion, allowed. That I don't understand. To me, it doesn't look like a handball. The referee took a lot of time at the VAR booth, talking about discussing it, and thinking if it was a handball or not. I don't know how you could take that long and say that it is a handball. I don't think it was personally, but so be it. Then there was that penalty called to give Vietnam the lead, and that call could have went either way. I do believe it was a penalty, but if you have a different opinion, let me know down low. I just don't think you can do that as a Singaporean defender and just cover the ball like that in the penalty box. If that's in the midfield, so be it. I just think it was a lack of focus and a desperation to hold on to the 0-0 draw that led to the Singaporean player just grabbing it and standing over it, and you can't do that in a penalty box. You can kind of do that somewhere elsewhere and get away with it, but you can't do that in the penalty box. So regardless, though, they still scored a second goal off the corner. So either way, they would have won if that goal still happened instead of the penalty or whatnot. Singapore still would have lost that game. But regardless, some missed calls, some right calls. Refereeing did not look that good throughout the match too. Not just with those two calls, but those two calls obviously are going to make the headlines. Throughout the match, it just wasn't. Personally, it just wasn't that good. That second goal, however, for Vietnam, it was pretty poor. I mean, in terms from the Singaporean perspective, it was a very poor and lazy defense from them. I don't think that late of a game. Obviously, you're tired. You've lost a little bit of focus. It's just hard for everybody to stay on top of their game. But too many players on the near post for that corner, and there was like nobody. There was nobody in that back post, and there was two Vietnamese players just pretty much waiting there, and it was an easy finish. It just wasn't a good look from Singapore, and unfortunately, it brought them down to 2-0, making that second leg just that much harder. 2-0 is a tough deficit to come back from, and you're going back to Vietnam. I'm pretty sure you're going back to Vietnam to play that second one. It's going to be a tough one for Singapore, and they really shot themselves in the foot to an extent. I mean, I would say both of those last two goals were their own fault. Yes, the referee, it was up to interpretation from the referee and from fans and whatnot, but I would say that it is their fault. That the reason they lost 2-0. Singapore overall, though, through the rest of the game, I think they played fairly decent. I don't think they were dominated by Vietnam in the way that maybe fans would have thought they would have been. And the same thing with the Thailand and the Philippines. They had a fairly decent game. They played well. They just gave Vietnam too much time and space to play their game, which you can't do with these top teams in anywhere, honestly, in world football, but especially in this region with Vietnam and Thailand. You can't let them play the game they want to play, because once they start playing it, you're playing catch up. They don't have to really play to the strengths and weaknesses of their opponent, because they have such good quality. They can play however they want to play, and that's kind of how Singapore let them play, which is the reason, in my opinion, why they lost. Vietnam's goalkeeper as well, I think, does deserve his flowers, because I thought he was a pretty big bright spot for this team. And if you don't know his story, he had to retire at some point very early on in his career because he just wasn't high in the pecking order. Went to school, went to university, came back, and later became a professional again later on, like a few good 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And now he's back with the Vietnamese national team and presenting this really good opportunities and performances for the Vietnamese national team. So shout out him. He had a really good game and didn't allow a single goal from Singapore. He kept a clean sheet, and Singapore wasn't able to finish any of their attacks. So very good shout out to him, and hopefully he keeps it up for the second game. I will say for Singapore, though, it is definitely clear to see that they are improving ever so slightly under their Japanese manager in Tsutomu Ogura. I do think they are looking a little bit better over time, which is very good. And any progression and increase in quality amongst this region of football is needed. You can't just have two top teams in Vietnam and Thailand, and and have these somewhat good teams. I think it's time to start these teams getting a little bit closer to the top and overall improving the region as a whole, which I do think is a fairly shared fan sentiment I've noticed online. You do kind of have to have that, group progression moving forward, even though there are these little rivalries amongst the region and whatnot in this tournament. You kind of have to move together moving forward. And I do think that's what they're kind of doing. I do think Singapore, Malaysia, even the Philippines are kind of starting to get into that groove of being competitive. Even Cambodia, I do want to mention Cambodia too. A lot of these teams are finally starting to get into the groove of beating these teams, or at least presenting a competition to a lot of these teams, which is really, really good. Now, I do think that Vietnam, after this, is the number one candidate to not only move forward, but to win the whole thing. I think in that first leg, I do think they looked better than Thailand might have done in the other matchup. I do think that Vietnam hold that number one contender position and are the favorites to win it right now. Obviously, Thailand are still very strong. If Thailand does overcome that 2-win deficit, I think they have to be the favorites going forward. I mean, they are the favorites, consistently at the beginning of every tournament. They are the best team in this region. They've won it twice in a row. I do think Thailand, as of right now, are not, but because they are behind Vietnam. But if they do overcome that deficit, they will be the number one contender to win the ASEAN Championship in 2024. So Vietnam and Thailand, for me, are still the most likely title matchup when it's all said and done. Obviously, I want the Philippines to move forward. I do think they can. I just think it's going to be a very, very tough, matchup for them in that second leg. If there is a team to overcome that deficit with their quality, it is Thailand. So Philippines do have to be a little bit, I don't want to say scared, but give respect in some capacity, but not enough where they can still dominate the game, or at least control where they need to control it. But Vietnam and Thailand is still the most likely one for me. But who knows? Philippines, I do hope and think they could hold on to their lead. Singapore might come back from 2-0. I think it's highly unlikely. I just don't think Singapore is a team to do it, especially against the likes of Vietnam. But you never know. They could do it, and Singapore and Philippines could both be in the final instead of Thailand and Vietnam. And that would be unprecedented. That'd be a huge change up for what people were expecting for this tournament. But that's going to be it for me, guys. If you guys have any comments or opinions, let me know in the comments down below, and I'm going to respond to as many as I can. If you've gotten to this point, I appreciate you watching, and we're going to have a lot more ASEAN content coming out pretty soon. So make sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And then, hopefully we do see the Philippines move forward, or we see your team move forward, and whoever that team is, let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys after the second leg. Take care.